so much reading to do before the end of the year and it's really just hitting me. Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tori. If you're new, today we're going to be talking about all the books that I need to read before the end of this year. And if you're wondering if I'm delusional, absolutely yes. Most of these are books that I put on my 23 books for 2023 challenge. These books were all also 5-star predictions for me. And then we've obviously added to this list as well because there's so many books that I've been reading recently that are series, and now I'm trying to binge all of these series. All of these books are fantasy books, a mix between some fantasy romance and some that are actually just true fantasy novels. So I hope that you're excited. If you are, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Let's talk about some books. Let us start this off with books that I have been screaming about recently, like absolutely losing my mind over, that you're probably already sick of hearing me talk about, but I literally couldn't stop myself if I tried. So the first series that we'll talk about is the Shadows and Crowns series. This is by S.M. Gaither, and the first book in the series is Song of the Marked. I have binge read the first 2 books in the series. It is a completed 5-book series. It's also on Kindle Unlimited. I would say it's like a 60-40 fantasy romance. 60% plot, 40% romance. The romance is so stunning. If you liked Throne of Glass and you're still not over Throne of Glass, I think that this would be a really good series to turn to. I'm not going to give a lot of synopses. I'll try to give like brief book descriptions in this video, but we don't have time for all of that. I have so many books to get through. I have 3 books left to read in this series. When I tell you that the first 2 books in the series made me cry, I am not a book crier. I wish I was. I always see the girlies on Instagram sharing pictures, like stories of them absolute sob crying after finishing a book, and I was like, wow, I wish that I could have a reaction like that to a book. This is the series for me then. It's very high stakes, there's a lot of action, and the romance, it is a new adult series as well, so so good. So that is 3 books right there already added to this list. The next book that I'll talk about, I need to finish this duet. So this is the Nightborne duet in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I just finished reading Serpent and the Wings of Night. I need to get to The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I will be reading this very soon, so I am not worried about getting to this one before the end of the year. If you're unfamiliar, I feel like a lot of people know about this series, but this is a fantasy romance series, new adult, also on Kindle Unlimited, about vampires in a very dark, bloodthirsty, desperate world. Everyone is fighting against each other. There is 0% peace and quiet in this book. Everyone is raging against each other, and I need to know the conclusion. Next up is the second book in the Frost and Nectar series. This is by C.N. Crawford. It's called Ambrosia. I read Frost within a 24-hour period a couple months ago, fell in love. This is also a Kindle Unlimited series if you don't want to purchase the physical copies. One of the most fun series that I've read. It is just a silly, goofy, funny time. The humor in this had me giggling to myself. It was actually embarrassing. We follow our main character, Ava. She has fallen on hard times. She walked in on her boyfriend cheating on her birthday. She goes to the bar to get drunk, stumbles across this unseelie king who is hosting a competition, women of all kinds, to compete to be his wife. It is a deadly competition book, and it is so much fun. It's kind of a low fantasy. It takes place between fairy and the human world. I was gonna say the real world, but fairy is real, let's be honest. The competition and the trials in this are vicious. So much fun to read about. It almost reads like a contemporary romance because our main character's stream of consciousness is very modern and hysterical, and she puts like a human twist on what's happening in fairy. The fairy world reminds me of more of an adult version of like a Cruel Prince Elfhame world. The Fae are out for blood. I think this next one goes without saying. If you watched my vlog for One Dark Window, you know how absolutely obsessed I am with this series. So we have 2 Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. I cannot wait to read this. I've been putting it off because I've been focusing on vampire romance books recently, but I cannot stinking wait to dive into this one and scream, cry, throw up about it. I see everyone that's been reading it lately. I got my pre-order, it came in, and I was like, it's taking everything in me to resist my urge to just drop absolutely everything and read this book. I will link my reading vlog for One Dark Window down below and up above. No further explanation needed. This needs to happen before the end of 2023. Last newer release that I'll talk about is Bonesmith by Nikki Pau-Preto. This is a YA fantasy. Our main character is a bonesmith called Ren. She's trying to become a Valkyr, a ghost fighting warrior. And she's trying to solidify her place in the noble house of bone and impress her frequently absent father. But when sabotage causes Ren to fail her qualifying trial, she is banished to the border wall, the last line of defense against a wasteland called the Breach, where the vicious dead roam unchecked. She has to make like a begrudging alliance, I believe. And when they travel together and spend so much time fighting each other and the undead, they discover that there's more to the both of them. There's more to the situation at hand. We love a YA fantasy romance moment, but also this world sounds incredible. Actually, I lied. The last one that I'll throw in here is Blood Mercy by Vela Roth, because I just finished Blood Price and I need to make it a priority to read the first official book in the Bloodgray series. Blood Price was the prequel book. The vampires that Vela Roth created with her brain stunned me. I literally have no words to describe it other than that. I need to know more about this world. I need to experience these vampires. The prequel leaves off on a really stunning final line that made me just want to pick up the rest of the series absolutely immediately. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be able to read like this 8-book series before the end of this year. So my qualifier is I want to at the very least read Blood Mercy, which is the first official book in that series. Okay, now we're gonna get back on track to the books that I put on my 23 books for 2023 that I still haven't gotten to yet, all of which are the 5-star predictions. So we're gonna start with one, don't come for me. I'm gonna give it another try. So that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I tried to read this book in the summer. I was listening to the audiobook. I made it more than halfway through. I put a little sticky note as to where I stopped. So I read all of this. I only have this much left. And I put it down because I have a feeling it was right book, wrong time syndrome. That's what I want to believe, because so many people who I trust their reading taste over my own, people that are my ride or die book recommenders, love this series, and I refuse to believe that it's not for me. I read Ninth House when it first came out and fell in love with it. I need to reread it, which is happening in November, because I have Hellbent on this list. Also just waiting for the paperback to come out. It still has not come out, and it hurts my soul to have mixed series. Like, this is obviously paperback, but I think I'm just gonna bite the bullet and buy the hardcover book because I need to read it before the end of this year. So, Hellbent. The other book that is literally the same scenario is A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. Priory of the Orange Tree was one of my favorite books that I read last year. It's still one of my favorite fantasies of all time. I absolutely ate up every single page and licked my plate clean. Love, 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 love. If you're looking for a dragon book with a stunning sapphic romance, that book blew my absolute mind. The fact that that story came out of Samantha Shannon's head and she put it on paper in such an eloquent way. Okay, absolute writing goddess. Day of Fallen Night is the standalone prequel to Priory. My understanding, you could read them in either order because they're both standalone fantasies. I've been waiting for the paperback to come out. It's not coming out until February of 2024. So I'm just gonna buy the hardcover. Honestly, there's so many editions of it on Pango at this point that I'm just gonna buy one off of Pango and live my best life. Speaking of incredible, amazing dragon books, I have The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This year, when I was making this list for myself in January, or maybe December of last year, I wanted to challenge myself to read more chunky, mature fantasy books, and John Gwynne was at the absolute top of my list. I also really want to read his series, like the Malice series. I wanted to start with dragons though, because dragons have my whole entire heart and soul. So The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is a Norse-inspired epic fantasy of blood and vengeance. I really didn't need too much more than look at the size of this dragon and then look at the size of this tiny little human. I was like, I know that I'm gonna eat this book up. Next up is Shadowless by Randall McNally. This is actually another book that I started earlier this year and ended up putting down, but I need to return to it. I didn't put it down because of lack of enjoyment. The writing style in this book is exquisite. The one thing that's really getting to me, or was getting to me when I was reading it, so this is a truly multi-POV story, probably the most multi-POV story I've ever read, because every single chapter in this book is from a different POV. Someone that you don't have any familiarity with. It jumps around to all these different people in different parts of this world that are going through their own experiences, and I stopped pretty early in this book. I stopped on page 122. It felt so jarring to be ripped from one place to another, and these people seemingly have no real connection to each other. They don't know each other. It felt like I couldn't get settled. So let me give you a synopsis of this so that all of that makes sense. It's a fantasy book about individuals that are born without a shadow. That means that they were spawned by the malevolent deities of this world. These children of the gods are persecuted at every turn, hunted by the high priests who carry out the wishes of their gods, hunted by the shadow watchers, armed soldiers who are assigned to each temple, and they're hunted by the gods themselves. So everywhere these people turn, they have to hide who they are, what they are, because they gonna die. Part mortal and part god, the Shadowless live for centuries and face a battle of survival, constantly on the run or hiding in far-flung corners of the northern realms. Soon, their lives and fates become intertwined, expedited by the mysterious monk Ambrosia. Driven by a series of visions, Ambrosia travels through the northern realms, seeking out the Shadowless and trying to enlist their help to take a stand and fight back against the gods. So super interesting premise, right? Randall McNally does a fantastic job of making you so invested in this one person that you have one chapter to get to know. And then I was having these moments where I'm like, wait, but I want to stay with this person. Like, I want to figure out what happens with them. I think talking about this book just now really helped me to be like, oh yeah, I really want to get back into that. So this needs to happen before the end of the year. Next up is Mortal Blade. This book also has gods that are meddling in mortal affairs, and that is another theme of this year that I found I really, really enjoy. So a city ruled by gods, a mortal champion, a misfit girl, and a disobedient dragon. That's all I needed to know. I've also talked about this book a lot on my channel, so I'm so sorry that I constantly give you the synopsis for this and I haven't read it yet. Stolen from his home, Korthy Holdfast has arrived in the city of the eternal siege as a new champion. He must fight alongside the Blades, whose lives are dedicated to the defense of the city against hordes of monstrous green hides, or die at the hands of the gods who rule. Then we have Maddie Jackdaw, who is a young Blade, and she faces her last chance thrown out of every unit defending the city. Either she takes on a new role or she will be sent to the Rats, a company of misfits, given the perilous tasks beyond the walls. Her new role, if she takes it, will bring her face to face with her deepest fears, for beneath the walls in a secret hidden lair lies a dragon imprisoned and waiting. Next up is Sword of Kayn. This is by M.L. Wang. This is another indie fantasy that has such high reviews and high praises from people who ought to know. I've heard Aaron from Booked and Busy talk about this book and love it. I've also heard Peruse Project talk about this book and love it. This is about a mother-son dynamic. It has to do with warriors who are like superhuman warriors. There's a lot of action, and I've heard that it's absolutely heartbreaking. Next up is another indie fantasy. This is probably my most intimidating book that I've put on my want to read list for this year, and that's why I haven't gotten to it yet. So depending on what edition you look at, they range from 728 pages to over 1,000 pages. So this is going to be one of the longest books that I read this year, but it sounds like it's going to be worth it. It sounds like a very mature fantasy that is chunky, and I guess it's the first book in a series, but the premise of this book sounds so interesting. Or Jaspar, that reminds me of Lion King. Jaspar is an ex-mercenary who has had a very harrowing war experience, so he really suffers from PTSD, and he's taken to drifting. It's a lonely existence, but bearing the occasional bout of melancholia, he has found the closest thing to peace a man like him deserves. Hoping to turn the page, Jaspar accepts a mysterious invitation into the beautiful but dangerous archipelago of Calais, and everything changes. Plagued by explosive social tensions and terrorism, the tropical empire is edging ever closer to civil war. Calais' merchant king is the only person able to prevent this catastrophe, but he has fallen into a preternatural coma, and it's Jaspar's task to figure out what or who caused it. As the investigation takes him across the archipelago and into the king's nightmares, unexpected events not only tie Jaspar's own life to the mystery, but also unearth inner demons he believed to be long exorcised. Battling old trauma while fighting for his life, his sanity, and the fate of Calais, the line between dream and reality blurs until only one question remains. If your mind is the enemy, where do you run? Tell me that doesn't sound good. Tell me. Tell me to my face. 2 more, and they're both very chunky as well. So the next book is The City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. It's a fantasy romance. I heard it gives Crescent City vibes. It's a very similar world. There are all different types of fantastical creatures that exist together. I'll be honest, I have no idea what the plot is about. Don't really need to. I feel like I'll be into it because I loved House of Earth and Blood so much, and House of Sky and Breath kind of fell flat for me. I'm chasing the high of House of Earth and Blood, and I'm hoping that City of Gods and Monsters will give me some semblance of the feeling that I got. We'll see how well that goes. But it has like fae, vampires, werewolves, witches, like all kinds of creatures. I think it's also a very urban fantasy feeling as well, and I need to read more urban fantasies. I don't read a lot of them. I'm just not pulled towards them typically. So where this one sounded interesting, caught my eye, we added her to the list. And then the last book that we will end this video on is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I have still yet to read anything by Brandy Sandy. I've heard that Warbreaker is a really good introduction to his Cosmere world. It's a standalone fantasy that he's written, and it sounds like a multi-POV that will give me vibes of like Samantha Shannon's Priory of the Orange Tree, just like an epic standalone fantasy that's multi-POV. It sounds like we have all of these characters that are going through their own things, but then their stories intertwine really nicely to pull you in, and I just love that so much. So very briefly, Warbreaker is the story of 2 sisters who happen to be princesses. Of the god king one of them has to marry, of the lesser god who doesn't like his job, and of the immortal who's still trying to undo the mistakes he made hundreds of years ago. That is it, my friend. I feel like I have so many more books that I need to read before the end of the year. However, these are all priorities. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, friends. If you have any of these books on your end of the year TBR, please let me know in the comments down below. If you've read any of these and loved any of these, please also let me know, because that will really motivate me to pick it up and pick it up ASAP. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one, friends. Bye!